Welcome to The Wedding Wear with Officiating by Amanda. Officiant pet peeves. So today's episode of The Wedding Wear with Officiating by Amanda is actually the 250 listener bonus episode. Thank you so much to everyone who's listened. We've been on for less than 3 months. Met this just shy of 2 months in. We hit the milestone. And so I've been working on getting this together. Thank you to everyone on the Facebook page, Officiating by Amanda, who submitted in votes for what content they wanted to have for this bonus episode. And it was decided officiant pet peeves, the little irksome things that from along the ways and journeys have made me go, oh, that again, or this is just something that when I leave a wedding, it still sticks in the back of my mind. And I'm very fortunate today being joined by a fellow officiant, Tristen. So I'm going to let her intro herself a little bit here. And then we've got a list of some pet peeves that we're just going to go through, maybe share a few examples of when these have happened to us or how they made our list somewhere along the way.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Tristan. I know Amanda by a lot of different categories, too many to list, honestly. But essentially, I became an officiant under her. So I helped her at a few of her wedding expos, and then I essentially decided to start officiating myself. So it was about a 6-month process for me to get my first one and then, actually officiate the wedding. So yeah, I've done 6 overall. But yeah, super happy to be here and celebrate all these milestones with Amanda.
Yeah. And it came together, we reached the milestone and you were coming in and Tristan and I worked together in a previous life and world. And so she's used to hearing me say like, oh, take notes. And I was like, I got to come up with pet peeves, like take notes. And as we were chatting these over, she's like, well, that wedding, I had this happen to me. I'm like, oh, you're so right. That is entirely a pet peeve. So yeah, again, full disclaimer, if you are a couple that, has done this or you're planning to do this, please know that we are not saying, you're horrible or we don't like you or we don't want to work with you. It's just, again, these are things that for some chemistry within our head or some background in our experiences, yeah, they're not our favorite thing. We're not going to do them personally. We don't judge. We still do the weddings. We still are actively booking. If you want Tristan, hit her up. She's around and available, handling a lot of Southern Pennsylvania, Maryland Panhandle. Virginia's a little tricky at times with their laws on officiating, but she's there.
And some of West Virginia as well, but I don't know what their laws look like. So we'd have to see on that one.
Exactly. Perfect. So why don't you pick one off of our list and just talk about why it's a pet peeve?
Why don't we start with the one that you came up with first? So, one category out of price.
Yeah, it is. It's like one of these things is not like the other. One of these things just don't belong. And a lot of weddings, they recommend, if you're setting, say, a $10,000 budget for your wedding, which very few people can pull off these days, but they say, 50%'s going to your venue, especially if it's a venue with food. And then, 25% is going to drinks and decorations. They have whole recommended breakdowns for no matter what your budget is, how you're relatively supposed to be spending that budget so that everything is taken care of, but taken care of realistically, financially feasibly, and in an aesthetic sense, all kind of looks parallel. But I get really in my head and constantly thinking about it when it's a backyard wedding. So again, venue was not at a cost. Totally fine. Love backyard weddings. No judgment. The food was maybe a pulled pork barbecue or something. The aunt made it. Grandma made her homemade dessert. Everyone did like kind of a potluck and some really good sides. Again, no judgment. Really, really good food. The groom is in, a new button-up shirt. Okay. Oh, maybe JC Penny. Maybe it's going to turn into a work shirt later on. We love elements for a wedding that have dual focus. And the bride walks down the aisle and she looks stunning. She looks beautiful. She looks gorgeous. She did her hair. I saw one of her bridesmaids doing her makeup, just absolutely fantastic. The dress and the shoes. And again, I have no knowledge on if it was a thrifted store or whatnot, but the dress and the shoes were $10,000 on their own, like custom made dress, high end. The shoes, the red Louboutin heels, like at a backyard wedding. It seems so out of place, not just from a budgetary standpoint of you spent all your money here, but it just doesn't kind of fit the vibe and the theme. And so that's something, again, I get a little, oh, what? I want, to almost kind of go up to the couples and be like, so how'd this happen? Like, what were you thinking? Like, tell me the backstory. Like, right, did you find the dress at a great price? Was it just you had to have it? Have you saved your entire life to be able to get that dress? And then your husband's like, well, I just want a backyard barbecue. And so you had to find a way to marry the two. Like, whatever it is, it just leaves me with a lot more questions than answers. And so that's why it makes my list is like, yeah, it's a little bit of pet peeve. Still gonna do it, but it's a little different.
Yeah, and, like, even if it is, like, the situation, like, where she's saved up her whole life for this dress, let's just say in this example, that's great for you, but also why isn't it included somewhere then? Or, like, it's out of place, like, if you're not drawing attention to it in some way.
And the balance also
Is
doesn't
so
match.
off. Yeah.
And I come from a place where, the one versus the many, both from a history perspective, from my work in fundraising. A lot of times the work that I do, you seek smaller gifts from the many versus a large gift from the one. And so similar expenses, if it was the groom who got a brand new tux, not rented, like bought a brand new tux, everything was a lot of focus and energy went for the one person. And then you kind of get some of the horror story of like, they expected us to actually pay for our McDonald's meal type of plate. What did that do for the many? There's definitely balances to be struck for the experience you have as a couple to make sure it's a special day for you and that you are beautiful because it is your day, but also a focus for the many.
Yeah, like, spread the love around a little bit to all the other
Yeah.
areas. And also, like, another thing that again, with the dress example, that I go back to, why wouldn't you spend that on your honeymoon?
An experience versus one day
Yeah, like, one dress, one day.
that might only fit you this one particular size and time in your life.
Yeah,
And if you don't have a daughter, are you handing it down? Yeah. A lot of
yeah.
dresses sit in closets. They end up in thrift stores where I got mine from. Perfect. All right. Let me see what we've got next on the list here. So one we have as a pet peeve of ours, and Tristan, give me your thoughts on it, is no plan for the officiant. We kind of show up on site with just blank stares. And if there is a plan, it's not a thought out one.
Yeah, so I brought up this idea because I have the most recent wedding that I did. I showed up that day and I'd been asking them like for kind of a day of plan breakdown, like what was I responsible for, like what kind of the ceremony was going to look like with everyone else in it, and I wasn't really getting a lot back. And so I was just like, well, I guess I'll just show up. I have the script written, so it's fine. So I show up and I can't even find anyone to begin. We're in this house multi-leveled and I can't even find anyone. It's a nightmare. And I get there, find the people who I'm supposed to, and they're like, "Okay, well you're also going to walk the rings down." And I was like, "Well, okay, I'm also the ring bearer now." Okay. And so the whole time walking from like this house to where the ceremony is in like an adjacent barn, I just keep thinking to myself, where the heck am I going to put this gosh darn ring box? Because it's just like a perfectly cubed box from, I think it was K Jewelers. And
It's a
I
little
was
too
just,
chonky to fit in your pants
yeah,
pocket, but you're probably wearing a dress.
exactly. I was wearing a jumpsuit that didn't have pockets, and I had a bag, but it was white, so I wasn't gonna bring it on to, like, the actual ceremony 'cause that no, and I wouldn't even bring my bag anyway to begin with, and so all I really have is, like, my black binder and this ring box, and so, I'm like standing on the side of the venue. They don't want me to walk down. They just want me to walk in from the side. And I was like, okay, well, they have like these like floral like arches and kind of like a box holder for each of them. Maybe I can just set it on the sides. But no, couldn't even do that. So the whole ceremony, I am holding this ring box in my hand with this binder and I'm struggling to flip pages. My hand is in pain. So it's just like when there is no plan, there's no thought behind like your ceremony. And it's just like, okay, let's get to the after. Like that drives me up a wall. And not knowing the plan either until like I get there and then like they just bombard you.
Yeah. And there's some who hyper focus on the plan where if it
Mhm.
doesn't go according to plan, there's some problems, but then there's definitely like the underperformers. And you and I, are slightly different with, kind of the information we seek to have at a start. And maybe it's because I've been doing this so long and hey, go ahead, throw a ring box at me. I've held them before, I'll hold them again. I don't I don't need to know the full landscape and layout. In fact, sometimes I really only need to know when you want me to get there. A lot of venues come with coordinators, which is a godsend. A lot of couples are, working with someone to do planning or even just day of execution, which is wonderful and helpful and so great. And I want to respect the role that those people have. So, like, I'm not going to come stepping on their toes in those situations and be like,
Mhm.
so who's walking down the aisle where? I did just get off the phone with a couple there. They're getting married in, gosh, a few short weeks. And they asked, like, okay, like the little flower girls and the ring bearers, do they stand or do they sit? And I get a lot of questions like that. I'm sure you do too, where they ask us
Mhm.
what's done. There's a couple different answers. There's what's traditionally been done. There's what typically has been done, which is what I use like my own past info, like, oh, well, typically the couples I've seen. And then there's option three, which is whatever the couple wants. And I think that with couples who struggle to figure out how to best use an officiant, they fall into that third category. Maybe don't have a parent telling them, "Oh, well, my wedding or grandma's wedding or Aunt Susie's wedding," the tradition. They might not have a coordinator who's telling them the typical, so they're just relying in that, like, land of, like, "Oh, well, the rings will get down there somehow, like, however we want," and coming up with the solutions themselves without necessarily thinking of, like, practicality. But I agree with you. I would always rather be asked on something rather than assumed on something. So them handing you a remarks and be like, "Oh, you'll carry these down." I'd be like, "Me and what army in what pocket?" Or, I try to come up with a better solution or alternative. But I've also been at the weddings where the couple's been literally staring at the ring box going like, "Oh my gosh, how do we get this down the aisle?" And in those moments, I'm like, yeah, this is where I can help. So, right, I'd rather
Mhm.
be offered than just assumed. And right, I'd love for them to know what my role is, but I don't need it fully detailed. They can still, have concepts of a plan, concepts of a of a thought with it, and I'll work with them on it. But it certainly is it's different. Every wedding is so different, and you can tell influences of who helps in planning. Is it the bride alone or, friends or sisters? Has she been in a lot of weddings? Parental influence, moms and dads and grandparents who all said, well, how about this and how about that? I've shown up at rehearsals and I'm sure you have too, where I don't think the bride and groom get a word in edgewise. It is mom and grandma and mother-in-law and the dads have but what about this? And it's tough because it's their day, but as in a lot of ways, it's everybody's shining moment. It's a great time of celebration for families, and that gets lost sometimes.
Want to move on to our next one?
Yeah.
All right. So our next one is vows written in the 11th hour or last minute.
Yeah, this gets me. And I'll bundle this up a little bit. I'll have a different episode on why I offer vow writing assistance the way I do. But if you elect to write your own vows, it's a great option if you feel that you can find the words for it. If you need help finding the words, sometimes there's a wonderful officiant friends that will help, or, shouting out ChatGPT. It can be good. Try it out. Don't wait until the last minute. I don't want to say do it super early. It's also the reason I don't write my script super early is because life happens and your relationship, especially in the wedding planning process, is going to adjust and change. You're going to have to come up with compromise. So if you wrote vows the day you got engaged, chances are you're promising some really great stuff, but you're not promising as much as you would closer to the end of the process where you've gotten over some big hurdles, like discussing finances, like discussing prenups and kids and who's going to take in who's sick elderly mom when the time comes. There's a lot of growth that happens in the wedding planning process. So if you're going to write your vows, my recommendation to avoid it being on my pet peeve list is start out like a month, 6 weeks to a month before your wedding, write a draft, fix a draft, read it over, make a few more adjustments to the draft, really think about, what sort of content's in there. If you are expecting a laugh, I like to ask people, who are you expecting a laugh from? If it's just your significant other, that's awesome. If you're trying to play to the audience or crowd, you might need to like dumb the joke down a little bit. They don't know your inside jokes. They're not going to know if you're being sarcastic or not. And half of them are your family members and friends. They're your spouse's family member and friends. They're not going to know that it's okay to laugh at/with you if that is the vibe you were going for. And those are some of the key things that really are missed in consideration when you elect to write vows the morning of the wedding, midnight the night before, after many Coors Lights or Coronas or Jaeger bombs. Don't. I would almost rather if you were planning to do your own vows and you said we don't need any help, but the muse didn't come to you, the words never appeared into your face, letting me know day of. As an officiant, I can do a lot to pivot. I could even help you with some stuff. I could adjust up some of the traditional vows and work with you to have it in your hands versus watch you stumble through what you scribbled in a notebook at 2 a.m. using some big words that you thought were really good the night before that now you're having a hard time pronouncing. I've seen some really tragic personal vows. I've seen amazing ones, disclaimers, but I've seen some really, really tragic ones. And so it just like I almost take it as a personal jab, like, I could have helped. Please, why won't you let me help you? And that's why it's a pet peeve of mine. Like, please let me either write your vows yourself and practice them and be ready, or option two, ask me for help. Let's talk about them. Let's practice. I can come in at whatever step in the process you're in sooner rather than later would be great. Or option three, nix the plan, scrap it, no vows is okay.
Yeah, I think something that comes for me with this like last minute vow writing. So the first thing that popped in my head while you were chatting was when couples don't discuss their vows with each other and one person writes an entire eulogy and an entire like book series, and then the other person writes like maybe a paragraph, and it's so unbalanced. It just it doesn't have a good feel to it in a ceremony. For me, it doesn't have a good feel standing there. Like I'm just like, oh gosh.
And it or when one lays heavy into the humor and the other
Yes.
lays heavy into the sincerity, and there's no nice blend between the two. And
Mhm.
and there's a fine line, especially with humor, of playable humor versus you went too far. So I think about the video of the one bride who they'd been engaged like 10 years or something. So when she pulled out her vows, she like blew baking soda, baking powder off of it to, it had dust on it for a split second. That's what it was. And everyone had a laugh. And then she went on with her vows and they were personal and they were great. Good example of humor, relationship related humor, tells the little bit of the story of who you are without having to say a word. Fantastic. Then you've got the different viral situation where, oh gosh, I don't want to give this episode a explicit content warning, but the groom thought it would be totally fine in his vows to say something like, "We'll be getting along great if you keep my stomach full and my balls empty." And again, there was laughter, but comfortably so. And there was
Yeah.
another example where someone kind of said the joke, but then kept the joke going like, hey, you got to be good in the kitchen and the bedroom. Well, you're only good in one of them so far. Like, do not be disparaging in your vows at
Oh,
all.
no, no,
Don't
no.
mention body parts, whether it's positive
Mm-mm.
or negative, unless it's like their eyes, their hair, their smile. Those are about it. Like, do not. There's a lot of pitfalls you could have with vows, which is why I really do not recommend waiting to the last minute. And I recommend you get someone to proofread it. I don't care who, just please, please.
Yes. Yes. Someone who has not had multiple Jaeger bombs, so not the night, before, like someone who is in their sane right mind and ready to read it. And the last thing I'll add to this last minute topic is that last minute before your wedding, you should be enjoying that with your person and with your friends and family. Like, especially if you guys are all at like the same venue and you guys are all doing like a stay in thing, that's a moment that you should be spending with family and your partner. You shouldn't be in a back room, in a bathroom, in the back of the bar somewhere, writing your vows like a manic person. You should be enjoying that time and being present.
Or like with my wedding, drinking 4 bottles of wine the night before. Don't worry, my vows were already written and printed and ready to go. And having things crossed off my list, it just meant I got to relax and really be ready for the next day, not fretting over some of the last minute things.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's see what else we have here. So it, I think this is certainly one for both of us as a pet peeve. I'll let you take first stab with it. Booking too far in advance. And again,
Yeah.
you've moved around a fair amount of bit. So I right now as I'm looking to migrate some couples from one region to another region, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know where life is even going to take me. How have
Mhm.
you managed to like balance that out?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of take it with a grain of salt. I mean, I love traveling. I love the crazy chaos part of life. So for me, as long as I have a bed and a place to stay, I'll make it work. Like I'll figure it out. I'll do what I gotta do. I'll travel where I gotta travel. I mean, with my job right now, it is a little difficult, but I do make sure to prioritize the officiating part of my life as well. And if I have said like I'm going to be there, I've made a commitment to be there, not only, contractual obligation, but like just for myself personally, I will be there. So even if I book a little bit too far in advance with someone, I will go, over hell and high water to try to get there and do what I can and accommodate. But it kind of goes back to what you were saying actually with writing scripts. That's what becomes difficult because you can't really start writing or becoming involved in that process so much later. So it's like it just goes on the back burner, and that's where I run into a problem. I forget about them.
Well, no, disclaimer, not forget about the wedding, but you forget some of the particulars of like the couple
Yes.
or
Yes.
their vibe, their sense, the themes they wanted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And my thought with the booking in advance is I used to totally be 1,010%. And then I'm trying this thing called like a life balance and trying to balance out personal with professional life and maybe a move and the kids and a family and travel. My gosh, it really got to me the one year when, we had some normal family trips that we were going to take in a summer. Never hard dates, it's never like, oh, it's the second weekend in July. It's just, oh, sometime this summer we'll go to Rehoboth. And I had gone for years and years straight. And then I was booking weddings at a year and a half, almost 2 years out for some of them. And next thing you know, my entire second half of July, August, and September were packed. So I had to turn down some of the bigger family experiences. And that was kind of hard. I've worked now to get some clauses into contract to take care of that. But with advanced booking, I think the harder one, the more pet peeve of mine is I love a good plan. I am a planner. I am all for the couple that wants to talk a year in advance, 2 years in advance, heck, 3 years in advance. But if you don't have a venue, you don't have a wedding. If you don't have a date, you do not have a wedding planned. You are still in planning. Venue, date at the absolute minimum before you get too far into the weeds with all of the rest of your vendors, because that's how vendors really end up inadvertently double booking. Is that, you talked to them at an expo and said, oh my gosh, yeah, December, maybe we're thinking late fall, early winter of 2027. They're like, yeah, yeah, the calendar's open. Sounds great. I'll send you a quote. You book the premium platinum package. And you do. And then, 6 months later, somebody comes along with more of a finite date that you don't have set yet. And as numbers start to crunch and things start to work out, it can be a real headache. I had a bride recently say like, "Oh my gosh, I'm getting married spring of 28, but I don't have a date and I don't have a venue." And I'm like, "Those are huge, huge questions. Even though it's 2028 and a while from now, I'm not holding that space open. I'm going to live my life and plan what I got to plan and do what I got to do. I'm not comfortable putting out a price quote without knowing at least a generalized vicinity of a venue, because it could be a night and day difference. Am I driving down into Philadelphia? Am I in Harrisburg? Am I in the Poconos? Or goodness, as you get throughout the eastern border of Pennsylvania, you could be in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia, and Ohio. Let's just name all six of the states that border Pennsylvania. Why don't we?
Yep.
Each of them is different with their marriage laws, with their timeline on things. I, I love a good planner, but don't come book an officiant, especially until you really have a plan. Officiants are often the last or the second to last booked vendor. And I've gotten more okay with that over the years. I used to be really annoyed with it, but honestly, I've got my schedule set. I know what it is. So coming to me at 2 months out sometimes is a lot easier for me to say, yes, let's move forward, or nope, I'm so sorry, I'm booked, and move you along to what's next in your journey than 2 years out with a lot of question marks.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you got for our last one?
Last one. Over respect or disrespect.
Oh my gosh. So I think in a seasoned world, I'll take over respect if you'll take disrespect.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So I am not a god. I am not anything more than human. I'm good human, but I'm not super special. I am not the be all end all. The world should not stop when I walk into a room, and it's a little it's a shocking the first time it happens, but then it gets a little like, oh gosh, right? All right, time to put on the Amanda.
Not the
When I
Amanda.
know, when it happens more than once or constantly, and that is, it's nothing, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just treat me human. You don't need to over respect me. You do not need to, you know, put a pedestal at my feet. I am not a bishop, pope, priest. I am not a king, a lord. I'm none of that. Yeah. So just when people are like, "Oh my gosh, like is that okay with you? What do you think?" Like they're seeking my blessing. They're seeking a lot of additional validation for their choices of it, and that's not me. I don't need that. Or when they feel like conversations have to stop when I walk into a room or a space. Oh, the number of groomsmen that have sworn in front of me and then instantly like apologize. I'm so sorry. And it wasn't, I'm so sorry because you are a lady. It's, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You're the minister. Dude, I spent 4 years at a fraternity basement. Let's keep those jokes going. So a fair level of respect and appreciation is totally fine. Please do not, cater to me, make me the sun, moon, stars. It's not about me.
Mm-hmm.
And again, unless I'm coming in at 4 hours notice to perform a wedding and really, quote, save the day, I don't need much more than a few simple, like, oh, that was so wonderful. Thank you so much. We loved hearing what you said. That's it. I'm simple in that way. And other officiants out there could totally be like, no, I love the respect and the additional, you know, over appreciation. I don't need it. Thank me. Let me go.
Yeah, and I'm in the same category with that. You can just thank me and let me go. I don't need the stars, moon, or anything else. I am not a part of the church. I'm good. So for disrespect, the thing with this is I'm not just some like random Joe Schmo you pulled off the sidewalk on some random street to officiate
Who
you.
clicked one random button once and thought, ooh, that might be fun. You actually researched quite a lot.
Yeah, and I did expos beforehand. I had assisted with script writing with you. Like,
You were at weddings, you shadowed.
exactly. Like, I did my due diligence. I do have, professional opinions
And
and professional
insight.
expertise to lend to me, A, being here, B, being able to be booked by you, and C, to just to have my license, period. Like, there are things that I know and am respected in for that. I'm not just some random person. So, like, if I'm making recommendations to you, if you asked for them, or, I'm a little shocked because you're doing something that way, like, and someone comes at me with a lot of defensiveness or very much like, no, it just, for me, it gives either very bridezilla, or it just makes me feel like I'm being undervalued and like I'm not being treated the best. And those are situations that I personally really don't like. I had a wedding that was very much that way, and I didn't even get a thank you from the bride and groom after. I didn't get fed. They literally just let me go, and like I handed them the paperwork and that was it. And the bride essentially rolled her eyes at me when I left. So it was pretty bad.
I I find it hard at times. I don't get as much disrespect. Ugh, drunken groomsmen aside, I don't get a ton of disrespect from the couple. Obviously, I talked to them, I consulted with them. We came in on a similar level. They're the ones I've been dealing with the whole time. Sometimes it's the parents.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
get that too.
Of, you know, gosh, why are you doing it this way? Especially when we're at a rehearsal or we're trying to do lineup and they're like, the mother of the bride is supposed to come second. It's like, hey, I'm not going to, and they address it to me. They look at me and say to me, one, I didn't plan your layout, this walking layout. The couple did that or their coordinator did that. Two, it's what the couple wanted or what the venue or coordinator would have recommended given industry traditions, standards, typical. And three, okay. Yeah, I answer a lot with that, like, oh, okay. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fact. Yeah, you don't like that you are walking second to your ex-husband and his wife. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay.
Thanks. And again, just some questions of I don't understand why this couldn't be in a church. Or it was a fine ceremony, but it could have been better if you were XYZ of a person. Or if you were, I was literally told once that I shouldn't have done the ceremony. I should have let a priest do it and I should have been a reader. The couple was very specific that they did not want secular hands anywhere near their wedding. And so, yeah, that one I was just like, "Oh, okay, like, thank you for that." But, uh, after gosh, I think I'll hit 200 weddings by the end of the year. A lot of it, I've come to be, you know what? I don't have to be friends. We don't have to be
Yeah.
close. We don't have to follow each other. I used to follow every bride, every couple. Unfortunately, got to see some of the divorces play out on social media. Now it's no, it's okay. Even if it's a great wedding, it's still okay. You've
Yeah.
got your wedding. I did my service. We're all good.
Yeah. And with the families too, especially the religious stuff, like I completely understand if that's important to you, but please don't project your wishes onto the bride and the groom, A. And B, then don't go as far as to project it onto me, the officiant, who's not even a part of any of that. Like,
Right.
there are better places that you can address that with other people and, the familial line and stuff like that. Don't take it up with me. I have
Yeah.
no place, no space in that.
Well, perfect. Well, it has been over 250 listens, over 10 episodes, less than 3 months in. So here's hoping that we can pass that 500. Oh my gosh, that would be surreal to surpass it like towards the end or very beginning of like month 4. That would just be really great. So I'll kind of kick it to you, Tristan. Any farewell wishes, any sign offs? If anyone wants to find you for things, they hit you up. They find you through me. You want her.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, you want Tristan, you come through me.
Yeah, I'm still open for booking. I don't do it as much as I used to, but I am still open to perform weddings. You can reach me through Amanda. And
We've
that's
got
probably the best place to rally me. Just because when I am not here, I'm very much in my management life. I run a jewelry store, funnily enough, that I ended up selling engagement rings right after becoming an officiant. But yeah, probably the best way is to find me through Amanda.
oh, perfect. Thank you all so much. And until next time, this has been Amanda and The Wedding Wear. Thank you for listening to The Wedding Wear with Officiating by Amanda. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and found some inspiration or insight for your own special day. This podcast is hosted on Buzzsprout and can be found on all major platforms. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like, comment, and share to help us reach even more listeners who might laugh a little at The Wedding Wear. For the links referenced in the show, visit Linktree at Officiating by Amanda. You can also follow the business on Facebook, Wedding Wire, and The Knot to stay up to date on everything going on. If you have a question you'd like me to answer on the podcast, just send an email to theweddingwearpodcast@gmail.com. And if you're ready to inquire about officiating services for your own big day, you can reach me at officiatingbyamanda@gmail.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, this has been Amanda.